The snow came down like accusations. Detective Sarah Chen should have known better than to meet an informant during the worst storm in years. But Vincent Castellano, the untouchable mob boss, was finally moving 20 million in stolen art tonight. The man across from her, Marcus Webb, had tired eyes and trembling hands. "I worked for him 7 years, he said. "Last week, they found my sister in the Hudson. By 2 a.m., they were hiding in an abandoned warehouse, watching the exchange go down." Marcus was shooting photos. Well, Sarah was calling for backup that would never come. Then the lights went out. In the absolute darkness, someone started shooting. Muzzle flashes lit the warehouse like lightning. Men screaming. Bodies falling. When the gunfire stopped, 3 people were dead. The art was gone. The money was gone. And Vincent Castellano was bleeding out in the snow. Sarah looked at Marcus, the man she had met 6 hours ago. The man she was starting to trust. Maybe even starting to feel something for. "Who shot him?" she asked. Marcus raised his camera slowly. "Does it matter?" he whispered. And Sarah Chen realized she might have walked into something far more dangerous than she ever imagined. What really happened in that warehouse? Wait, can Sarah trust Marcus? And when the sun rises on the coldest morning in years, who will still be alive? 10 p.m. The snow came down like accusations, thick and relentless against the windows of the Blue Moon Diner. Detective Sarah Chen pressed her forehead against the cold glass and watched the city disappear under white. It had been coming down for 6 hours straight. The weather service was calling it the storm of the decade. Most people had the good sense to stay home. Sarah should have been one of them. She turned back to her coffee, now cold, and the case file spread across the booth. The Castellano case, 3 months of dead ends, and bodies that kept turning up in the East River. Vincent Castellano was careful, connected, and completely untouchable. Until tonight. The tip had come in at 9:30. Anonymous caller, male, nervous voice. Said Castellano would be moving something valuable through the city tonight. Said it was her only chance to catch him dirty. Said to come to the Blue Moon Diner and wait. Sarah checked her watch again. 10:05. The bell above the door chimed, and a man walked in, shaking snow from his dark coat. He was tall, early 40s maybe, with the kind of face that suggested he smiled rarely but meant it when he did. His eyes swept the diner. Just her, the waitress, and an old man nursing soup at the counter. Before settling on Sarah, he walked straight to her booth and sat down without asking. "You are Detective Chen," he said. It was not a question. "Was." "And you are Marcus. Marcus Webb. I am the one who called." Sarah studied him. Expensive coat, but worn at the edges. Tired eyes that had seen too much. Hands that trembled slightly as he set them on the table. "You said you had information about Castellano." Marcus glanced at the waitress, who was deliberately not looking their way. When he spoke, his voice was low. "I worked for him. 7 years. Bookkeeper, money laundering, all the boring numbers that keep empires running. I got out 6 months ago. Or I thought I did. But you do not just leave Vincent Castellano. Then why are you here?" "Because tonight he is moving the Devereaux collection. 20 million in stolen art. Pieces that disappeared from private collections over the last 5 years. He has a buyer. Russian oligarch with more money than sense. The exchange happens at 3 a.m. in a warehouse in Red Hook. If you want to bring him down, this is your chance." Sarah leaned back. It sounded too good, too convenient. In her experience, gifts like this came with teeth. Why now? Why tonight? Marcus looked away, his jaw tightening. "Because my sister, she got involved with one of Castellano's lieutenants. She wanted out too. Last week, they found her in the Hudson." The words hung in the cold air between them. "I am sorry," Sarah said. and meant it. Sorry does not help her, but putting him away might. 11 p.m. The snow had intensified. Sarah and Marcus sat in her unmarked sedan 2 blocks from the diner, the engine running to keep the heat going, though it was barely winning against the cold seeping through every seal. The warehouse is abandoned, Marcus was saying, tracing a rough map on a fogged window. East side has a loading dock. West side has a small entrance, probably where Castellano will come through. He is careful. Never more than 3 guys with him for something like this. And the buyer? Probably the same. Castellano does not like crowds. Sarah watched the snow pile up on the windshield. Her radio had gone quiet an hour ago. Dispatch was overwhelmed with accidents and emergency calls. The entire NYPD was stretched thin tonight. She had called for backup before leaving the diner, but the response had been clear. Everyone available was already deployed. She was on her own until at least 4 a.m. We cannot just walk in there, she said. No, we watch. We wait. We get evidence, photos, something concrete. Then you can get a warrant that actually sticks. Sarah turned to look at him. In the dim light from the street lamp, half buried in snow, his profile was sharp and sad. You are risking your life for this. You know that. He met her eyes. There was something in his gaze. Intensity that made her heart skip. She looked away first, focused on the practical. We will need a camera. Evidence that will hold up in court. I have one, Marcus said, pulling a 35mm from his coat pocket. Hua, Nikon. Not fancy, but it works. You came prepared. I have been planning this for 6 months, since the day Castellano told me I could never really leave, that I would always belong to him. He smiled then, bitter and cold. I do not belong to anyone. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. This was not just about justice for him. This was about freedom. Tell me about your sister, she said quietly. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then, Helena. She was bright. That is the word. Not just smart, though she was. She lit up rooms, made everyone around her feel like they mattered. She was studying to be a teacher. Can you imagine? 24 years old, whole life ahead of her. And she fell for a guy in a nice suit who bought her expensive dinners. He paused, his breath fogging the window. By the time she realized what he really did, she was in too deep. She tried to break it off. He told Castellano she knew too much. And Castellano, he does not take chances. How do you know it was him? Because he told me. Sat in my office and told me what happened to people who become liabilities. Told me to remember that. Told me I was too valuable to lose. But only as long as I stayed valuable. Sarah felt anger rising in her throat. She had seen too many victims of men like Castellano. People who thought they owned other people like property. We will get him, she said. I promise you that. Marcus turned to her, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. 2 people who had lost too much to men who thought they were above consequences. Midnight. They drove through streets that were becoming impassable. The snow was knee-deep in places, and the few plows working could not keep up. The city felt abandoned, post-apocalyptic. Streetlights cast orange halos through the falling snow. Nothing moved except their car, crawling forward. Sarah's hands were tight on the wheel. The heater was struggling now, and frost was forming on the inside of the windows. She could see her breath. Tell me something, Marcus said suddenly. Why did you become a detective? Sarah glanced at him, surprised by the question. My father was a cop, Brooklyn precinct, 25 years. He believed in justice. Real justice, not just the kind you can buy. When I was 12, he investigated a city councilman for corruption. Had evidence. witnesses, everything. But the councilman had friends. My father got transferred to a desk job, then pushed into early retirement. He died 6 years later, never having put that man away. She paused at a red light, though there was no other traffic. I became a detective because someone has to care. Someone has to keep fighting even when the system is rigged. Even when the bad guys have all the money and all the connections. Because the moment everyone stops caring is the moment they win completely. Marcus nodded slowly. Your father would be proud of you. I hope so. They drove in silence for a while. Then Marcus said, I was an artist once, before all this. Painted, mostly cityscapes and portraits. I was not very good. But I loved it. The way you could take something ordinary and find the beauty in it, or the truth. When I started working for Castellano, I told myself it was temporary, just until I made enough money to really pursue art. That was 7 years ago. I have not picked up a brush since. Why not? Because when you spend your days helping a monster hide his money, you lose the right to create beauty. It felt hypocritical. Sarah thought about that. It is not too late, you know. After tonight, you could start again. Maybe, if we survive. We will survive, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. 1 a.m. The warehouse district was a graveyard of industry. Massive brick buildings loomed out of the snow, windows broken or boarded, graffiti barely visible under the white. Sarah parked 3 blocks away from the target location, tucked behind an abandoned trough that looked like it had not moved in years. They would have to walk from here. Marcus pulled the camera out, checked it, and hung it around his neck under his coat. Sarah checked her service weapon, a Glock 9mm, and made sure she had her badge and handcuffs. Ready? She asked. He nodded. They got out of the car, and immediately the cold hit like a physical force. The wind had picked up, driving snow into their faces like needles. Sarah pulled her coat tighter and started walking. The streets were completely empty. No tire tracks, no footprints except the ones they were making. The city had surrendered to the storm. Sarah could not hear anything except the wind and their footsteps crunching through the snow. It took 15 minutes to reach the warehouse. It was 4 stories of dark brick, windows like dead eyes. A faded sign read, Delancey Manufacturing Company, East, 1923. Whatever they had manufactured here was long gone. Marcus pointed to the west side. That entrance. We can get to the 2nd floor, get a vantage point. They circled around, staying low, though Sarah doubted anyone could see them through the snow. The door Marcus indicated was padlocked, but the wood frame was rotted. One hard kick, and it splintered open. Inside was darker than the street. Sarah pulled out her flashlight and clicked it on. The beam revealed a gutted interior, trash and debris everywhere, graffiti covering the walls. Stairs led up into darkness. They climbed carefully, testing each step. The building groaned around them, settling under the weight of snow on the roof. On the 2nd floor, they found a row of windows overlooking the main floor below. Perfect, Sarah whispered. They positioned themselves by the center window. Below was a vast open space, empty except for support columns and more debris. At the far end, a loading dock door, currently closed. To the left, another entrance. This one with white showing around the edges. Someone is already here, Marcus said quietly. Sarah checked her watch. 1:15. Castellano was early. They waited in the cold and dark. Sarah's fingers were going numb. She flexed them, kept moving, tried to stay ready. Beside her, Marcus was absolutely still, watching. Can I ask you something? He said after a while. Sure. Do you believe people can change? Really? Change? Sarah thought about it. I think people can choose differently. Whether that is the same as changing, I do not know. Why? Because when this is over, I need to believe I can be someone other than the man who helped Castellano for 7 years. I need to believe I am not just stained permanently. Sarah looked at him in the dim light. "You are here," she said. "You are risking everything to stop him. That counts for something, does it? Or am I just trying to buy my way out of guilt? Or maybe both. Maybe that is okay." Marcus smiled slightly. "You are not what I expected, Detective Chen." "What did you expect?" "Someone harder, more cynical." "I am plenty cynical," Sarah said, "but I have to believe people are worth saving. Or what is the point of any of this?" Before Marcus could respond, light flooded the floor below. The loading dock door was rolling up with a metallic screech. 2 black SUVs pulled in, snow cascading off their roofs. "They are here," Sarah breathed. TWAM. 4 men got out of the first SUV. Sarah recognized Vincent Castellano immediately from his file photos. 50-something, silver hair, cashmere coat that probably cost more than she made in a month. He moved with the confidence of a man who had never faced real consequences. 3 men exited the second vehicle. 2 were clearly muscle, big guys in tactical gear. The third was older, 60s maybe, in a fur coat and hat. The buyer. Marcus was already shooting, the camera shutter clicking softly. Sarah watched through the dirty window as Castellano and the Russian met in the middle of the space, shook hands. They talked for a few minutes, their voices carrying up but distorted by the wind outside. Then one of Castellano's men brought forward a metal case. He opened it, revealing what looked like documents and photographs. The Russian examined them carefully, nodding. He gestured, and one of his men brought forward a similar case. This one, Sarah knew, would contain payment. Probably bearer bonds or diamonds, something untraceable. The exchange was about to happen. Marcus kept shooting. Sarah pulled out her radio, tried again to raise dispatch. Still, nothing but static. They were completely cut off. That was when the lights went out. The warehouse plunged into absolute darkness. Below, someone shouted. Flashlight beams cut through the black, swinging wildly. "What the hell?" Marcus whispered. Sarah felt it then. The total absence of background noise she had not even realized was there. No hum of streetlights, no distant sound of electronics. The blackout Marcus had mentioned, the widespread one, it had just hit. And in the confusion below, someone started shooting. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like lightning. Sarah dropped instinctively, pulling Marcus down with her. Glass shattered. Men were shouting, screaming. More gunfire. The sound deafening in the enclosed space. "What is happening?" Marcus said, his voice tight with fear. "I do not know." "Stay down." The gunfight continued for what felt like forever, but was probably less than a minute. Then silence. Footsteps running, an engine roaring to life. More shouting, this time in Russian. Sarah risked looking over the window ledge. In the sweep of flashlight beams, she could see bodies on the ground. The SUVs were gone. Loading dock door open to the storm. Someone had used the blackout to make a move. "We need to get down there," Sarah said. "Are you insane? Someone just... People might be hurt. I am a cop. I have to check." She was already moving, flashlight in one hand, weapon in the other. Marcus followed, cursing under his breath. They made their way down the stairs carefully. The ground floor was chaos, spent shell casings everywhere, blood on the concrete. Sarah counted 3 bodies, 2 of Castellano's men, and... "Oh God," Marcus said. The third body was Helena's boyfriend, Tommy Castellano, Vincent's nephew. Half his face was gone. Sarah moved to the other bodies, checking for pulses. Both dead. She swept her light around the space. The cases were gone, both of them. Someone had taken everything and run. "Where is Castellano?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking. "Good question." Sarah moved toward the loading dock, stepped out into the storm. Tire tracks led away into the night, already filling with snow. No sign of the SUVs. Her radio crackled suddenly. She grabbed it. All units, be advised. Power is out across Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn. Estimated restoration time, 6 to 8 hours. Emergency services are overwhelmed. Officers are advised to shelter in place, unless actively engaged in life-threatening situations. Sarah clicked the radio. This is Detective Chen. Shield number 7421. I have a multiple homicide at the Delancey Manufacturing Building in Red Hook. 3 deceased. Suspects fled the scene. Requesting backup in forensics. Static. Then Chen. We have no units available. Secure the scene as best you can. Someone will get there when possible. The radio went dead. Sarah looked at Marcus, who had followed her out. His face was pale, eyes wide. They left Tommy, he said. It left him. Castellano must have gotten away. Took the art and the money and ran. Or what? Or someone else was here. Someone we did not see. Tree. They went back inside. Sarah knew she should preserve the crime scene, but with no backup coming and no power, her options were limited. She took her own photos with Marcus's camera, documented everything she could by flashlight. Marcus sat against a wall, staring at nothing. I know I should feel something, he said. Tommy was part of it all. He helped kill Elena, but seeing him like that... You do not have to justify being human, Sarah said. She finished her documentation and came to sit beside him. The cold was seeping into everything now. Her fingers felt like ice even inside her gloves. What happens now? Marcus asked. We wait for backup. We give statements. We try to figure out what the hell happened here. Castellano will disappear. You know that. He's probably already on a plane to somewhere without extradition. Maybe. Yeah. Or maybe he is dead in the snow somewhere, and we just have not found him yet. They sat in silence. Outside, the storm continued its assault. Sarah checked her watch. 3:08. 4 hours until dawn. Until the city might start functioning again. Tell me about your art, she said suddenly. What did you paint? Marcus looked at her, surprised. Why? Because we are stuck here in the dark and cold with 3 dead bodies. And I would rather talk about something else. So tell me, what did you paint? A slow smile crossed his face. The first real one she had seen. Cityscapes mostly. New York. At different times of day, different seasons. I love the way light changed everything. Same buildings, same streets. But at dawn they looked hopeful. At midnight they looked dangerous. At sunset they looked melancholy, maybe. Like they were saying goodbye to something. That is beautiful, Sarah said. I painted Elena once, for her 21st birthday. She was laughing in it, sitting in Central Park with ice cream melting down her hand. She said it was the best gift anyone ever gave her. His voice cracked on the last words. Sarah did something she never did on duty. She reached over and took his hand. He did not pull away. They sat like that in the dark. 2 people holding on to each other against the cold and the grief and the impossible situation they were in. I am glad you called me, Sarah said quietly. I am glad you trusted me. I did not have anyone else to trust, but I am glad it was you too. They talked then. Really talked. About everything and nothing. Sarah told him about her mother, who died when she was 8, and how she barely remembered her voice anymore. Marcus told her about growing up in Queens, about a father who left and a mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them fed. They talked about the city they both loved. This massive, chaotic, beautiful place that could be so cruel and so kind in the same breath. And somewhere in that darkness, something shifted between them. Something that felt like the beginning of something rather than the end. 4 a.m. A noise from outside brought them both to their feet, weapons ready, Sarah her Glock, Marcus, a metal pipe he had found, footsteps, crunching through snow. A flashlight beam swept through the open loading dock. Sarah called out, "Police! Identify yourself." The beam stopped. Then a voice, old and rough. "I am no threat, just a security guard." Saw the light. Came to check. A man stepped into view, 70 at least, in a heavy coat and security uniform. He saw the bodies and stopped. Jesus! Mary and Joseph. What happened here? "Multiple homicide," Sarah said, showing her badge. "I am Detective Chen. NYPD. The scene is secured." The old man, his badge said. Frank Murphy. Looked shaken but not surprised. This building's been trouble for years. Drug deals, squatters. Now this. I told the city they should tear it down. Did you see anyone leave? 2 black SUVs, maybe 20 minutes ago. Saw one. Was heading south fast as they could through the snow. Crazy driving in these conditions. Just one SUV. Just one. Sarah and Marcus exchanged looks. That meant the other vehicle was somewhere else, maybe with Castellano, maybe not. Frank offered to stay with the bodies while Sarah and Marcus checked the perimeter. Outside, the world was still locked in white. Snow had covered most of the tire tracks, but Sarah could still make out the direction the vehicles had gone. They followed the tracks around the building to the south side, and there, half buried in snow against the far wall, was the second SUV. Sarah approached carefully, weapon ready. The driver's side door was open. Inside, the interior light was dead. No power, but her flashlight revealed blood on the steering wheel, the seat. And slumped in the back, barely conscious, was Vincent Castellano. 5 a.m. He had been shot twice, once in the shoulder and once in the abdomen. The blood loss was significant, and he was fading in and out of consciousness. Sarah called for an ambulance on the radio. Was told it would be at least an hour, maybe more. The streets were impassable in most places. She dragged Castellano out of the SUV and into the warehouse, where at least they had some shelter from the wind. Frank helped her, asking no questions. Marcus stood back, watching the man who had ordered his sister's death slowly dying on the concrete floor. "We need to stop the bleeding," Sarah said. She tore strips from her shirt, made pressure bandages. It was not much, but it was something. Castellano's eyes fluttered open. He focused on her with difficulty. "Detective." "Chen," he whispered. His voice was thin, wet with blood. "Who did this?" Sarah asked. "Who shot you?" Castellano laughed, and it turned into a cough that brought up blood. "Russian bastard. Had another man. In the shadows, waited for, blackout. Took everything. The art and the money. Gone." Castellano's eyes found Marcus. You did this," called the cops. Marcus stepped forward. "You killed Elena. Casualties. Of business. Nothing. Personal." "It was personal to me," Marcus said coldly. Castellano coughed again. "Guess. We're both dead men now." His eyes closed. For a moment, Sarah thought he was gone. But his chest was still moving, shallow breaths barely visible. "Will he make it?" Marcus asked. Sarah looked at the wounds. "The blood loss. I do not know. Maybe. Do you want him to?" It was a loaded question. Sarah thought about all the victims, all the lives Castellano had destroyed. She thought about Elena, about Marcus's 7 years in hell, about justice and mercy and the complicated space between them. "I want him to stand trial," she said finally. "I want his victims to see him answer for what he has done. I want the system to work the way it is supposed to, just once." Marcus nodded slowly. "Oh, okay. Then we keep him alive." They took turns monitoring Castellano. keeping pressure on his wounds, keeping him warm with their coats. Frank brewed coffee on a camp stove he kept in his security shack. God bless him. And they drank it gratefully, the warmth spreading through their frozen bodies. 6 a.m. The ambulance finally arrived as dawn was breaking. The snow had stopped, and the sky was lightening to a pale gray. Paramedics took over, stabilized Castellano, and loaded him onto a stretcher. Backup arrived too, finally. 2 patrol cars and a detective from Major Crimes, a guy named Rodriguez who Sarah knew slightly. She gave her statement, showed him the photos, explained everything. Rodriguez looked skeptical but wrote it all down. Your informant, this Marcus Webb. He has quite a history with Castellano. Defense will have a field day with that. He watched his sister get murdered, Sarah said. He came forward. That takes courage. Or revenge. Courts do not like revenge. Well, then we make sure the evidence speaks for itself. Rodriguez looked at the bodies, the shell casings, the blood. This is going to be messy. The Russian getting away with everything. Castellano, maybe dying before trial. Your informant as the main witness. No guarantees any of this sticks. I know, Sarah said, but we have to try. The forensics team arrived. The crime scene became official. Sarah and Marcus were separated for their statements. Standard procedure. She did not see him for 2 hours. When they finally released her, the sun was fully up. The city was starting to dig itself out. Plows were working the main streets, and she could hear the distant sound of traffic, life returning. She found Marcus sitting on the hood of her car, which was now buried to the wheel wells in snow. He looked exhausted, older than he had looked 12 hours ago. They are going to want you in protective custody, Sarah said, until the trial. If there is a trial. I know. Marcus looked at her. What are my chances? Really? Better than they were yesterday. The Russian left forensic evidence. We have the bodies, the photos, my testimony. And we have you. The man who laundered money for 7 years. The man who stopped laundering money. The man who risked everything to take Castellano down. That counts, Marcus. He slid off the car hood and stood in front of her. We spent the night together in a warehouse with 3 dead bodies. And I still do not want to say goodbye to you. Sarah felt her heart skip. I do not want to say goodbye either. So what do? We do this the right way, Sarah said. You testify. You help put Castellano away. You do whatever the DA needs you to do. And when it is over, she stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. When it is over, you take me to dinner, somewhere nice, and you tell me about your paintings. Marcus smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his face. It is a date, Detective Chen. Sarah, she said. When this is over, you can call me Sarah. 7 a.m. They drove back to the precinct in silence. But it was a comfortable silence, the kind shared by people who had been through something together and come out the other side. The city was waking up around them, covered in white, beautiful and harsh in the morning light. Sarah thought about justice, about the long road ahead. Castellano would likely survive. He would face trial. The Russian would probably never be caught. Marcus would spend months in protective custody, testifying, reliving the worst parts of his life. None of it would be clean or easy, but Elena would have her justice, and all the other victims would have theirs too, maybe. And Marcus would have his chance to be someone new, someone free. And Sarah would keep fighting, because someone had to care. Someone had to believe the system could work, even when it was hard, even when it was messy. She looked over at Marcus, who was watching the city go by. He must have felt her gaze because he turned and met her eyes. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For believing me. or helping me, or everything. Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand briefly before putting hers back on the wheel. Thank you for calling, for trusting me, and being brave. The precinct loomed ahead, and with it the long process of justice. But for now, in this moment, Sarah let herself feel something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. EPI log, 4 months later. The trial took 6 weeks. Marcus testified for 3 days straight, walking the jury through 7 years of financial records, shell companies, and blood money. The defense tore into him, called him a criminal, a turncoat, a man motivated by revenge. But Marcus held firm. He told the truth, all of it, and let the chips fall where they would. The physical evidence helped. Ballistics matched the bullets to guns found in the warehouse. DNA evidence placed Castellano at the scene. Sarah's testimony about the exchange corroborated Marcus's account. The photos were damning. In the end, Vincent Castellano was convicted of racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and a dozen other charges. The judge gave him 35 years. He would die in prison. The Russian was never found. Disgrace. The Devereaux collection was never recovered. Some stories do not have completely happy endings, but some do. On a Saturday evening in April, when the city was finally warm again and the last of the snow had melted away, Sarah stood in front of a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, wearing a blue dress she had bought specifically for this occasion. Marcus was waiting inside. She could see him through the window, nervous, checking his watch. He had cut his hair, was wearing a suit that actually fit. He looked good. He looked free. She walked in, and his face lit up when he saw her. He stood, pulled out her chair, acting like a gentleman from another era. You look beautiful, he said. You look nervous. She replied with a smile. Terrified, he admitted. It's been a long time since I went on a real date. They ordered wine, talked about everything except the trial, which had ended 3 weeks ago. Marcus told her he had found a small apartment in Brooklyn, was working as a bookkeeper for a nonprofit. Clean money, he said. Felt different, lighter. And the painting? Sarah asked. He smiled. I joined a class, community center. Wednesday nights. I am terrible, completely out of practice, but I am doing it. I am creating something again. I would love to see your work sometime. No, you will. I am painting the city again, but different now. I am trying to find the moments of grace, the small kindnesses, the people helping each other, the light breaking through. That sounds beautiful. It is, or it will be. They talked through dinner, through dessert, through coffee. The restaurant staff eventually started giving them looks, and they realized they'd been there for 4 hours. Outside, the city was alive with spring. People walking dogs, couples holding hands, street musicians playing jazz on the corner. The New York that survived everything, that kept going no matter what. Walk with me. Ja, Forge, Marcus asked. Always. They walked through the village, past brownstones and cafes, past parks where children played and old men played chess. They talked about the future carefully, like it was something fragile that might break if they moved too fast. But it was there, the possibility of something real, something lasting. 2 people who had met in the worst circumstances and found something worth holding on to. As they crossed into Washington Square Park, Marcus stopped. He turned to Sarah, took her hands in his. I know this is complicated, he said. I know I come with a lot of baggage, but these last 4 months, knowing you were there, knowing this was waiting, it kept me going. You kept yourself going, Sarah said. You were brave. You did the right thing. Because you believed I could. Because you gave me a reason to be better. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not pull away. She kissed him. There in the park as the sun set and the city lights came on, I felt like a beginning. Not an easy one, not a perfect one, but real and true and theirs. When they finally broke apart, both smiling, Sarah said, "So, second date, definitely. But maybe somewhere warmer. I have had enough of the cold for a while." Sarah laughed, bright and free. "It is a deal." They walked on through the spring evening. Two people who had survived the coldest night and found each other in the thaw. The city stretched out around them, massive and indifferent and full of possibility. And somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang 7 times, marking the hour, marking time, marking the moment when everything changed. The end.